He hardly rode his bike at all on the way home from school, on the afternoon before Needful Things was scheduled to open. He was lost in a warm daydream, which would not have passed his lips had he been coaxed with hot coals or bristly tarantula spiders, where he asked Miss Radcliffe to go with him to the Castle County Fair, and she agreed. "Thank you, Brian," Miss Radcliffe says, and Brian sees little tears of gratitude in the corners of her blue eyes so dark in color that they look almost stormy. "I've been, well, very sad lately. You see, I've lost my love." "I'll help you forget him," Brian says, his voice tough and tender at the same time. "If you call me Bri." "Thank you," she whispers, and then, leaning close enough so he can smell her perfume, a dreamy scent of wildflowers, she says, "Thank you, Bri. And since, for tonight at least, we will be girl and boy instead of teacher and student, you may call me Sally." He takes her hands, looks into her eyes. "I'm not just a kid," he says. "I can help you forget him, Sally." She seems almost hypnotized by this unexpected understanding, this unexpected manliness. He may only be 11, she thinks, but he is more of a man than Lester ever was. Her hands tighten on his. Their faces draw closer, closer. "No," she murmurs, and now her eyes are so wide and so close that he seems almost to drown in them. "You mustn't, Bri. It's wrong." "It's right, baby," he says, and presses his lips to hers. She draws away after a few moments and whispers tenderly, "Hey, kid, watch where the fuck you're going." Jerked out of his daydream, Brian saw that he had just walked in front of Hugh Priest's pickup truck. "Sorry, Mr. Priest," he said, blushing madly. Hugh Priest was nobody to get mad at you. He worked for the Public Works Department and was reputed to have the worst temper in Castle Rock. Brian watched him narrowly. If he started to get out of his truck, Brian planned to jump on his bike and be gone down Main Street at roughly the speed of light. He had no interest in spending the next month or so in the hospital, just because he'd been daydreaming about going to the county fair with Miss Radcliffe. But Hugh Priest had a bottle of beer in the fork of his legs. Hank Williams Jr. was on the radio singing high and pressurized, and it was all just a little too comfy for anything so radical as beating the shit out of a little kid on a Tuesday afternoon. "You want to keep your eyes open," he said, taking a pull from the neck of his bottle and looking at Brian balefully. "Because next time, I won't bother to stop. I'll just run you down the road. Make you squeak, little buddy." He put the truck in gear and drove off. Brian felt an insane and mercifully brief urge to scream, "Well, I'll be butched," after him. He waited until the orange road crew truck had turned off onto Linden Street and then went on his way. The daydream about Miss Radcliffe, alas, was spoiled for the day. Hugh Priest had let in reality again. Miss Radcliffe hadn't had a fight with her fiancé, Lester Pratt. She was still wearing her small engagement ring and was still driving his blue Mustang while she waited for her own car to come back from the shop. Brian had seen Miss Radcliffe and Mr. Pratt only last evening, stapling those Dice and the Devil posters to the telephone poles on Lower Main Street, along with a bunch of other people. They had been singing hymns. The only thing was, the Catholics went around as soon as they were done and took them down again. It was pretty funny in a way, but if he had been bigger, Brian would have tried his best to protect any posters Miss Radcliffe put up with her hallowed hands. Brian thought of her dark blue eyes, her long dancer's legs, and felt the same glum amazement he always felt when he realized that come January she intended to change Sally Radcliffe, which was lovely, to Sally Pratt, which sounded to Brian like a fat lady falling down a short, hard flight of stairs. Well, he thought, fetching the other curve and starting slowly down Main Street, maybe she'll change her mind. It's not impossible. Or maybe Lester Pratt will get in a car accident, or come down with a brain tumor, or something like that. It might even turn out that he's a dope addict. Miss Radcliffe would never marry a dope addict. Such thoughts offered Brian a bizarre sort of comfort, but they did not change the fact that Hugh Priest had aborted the daydream just short of its apogee, kissing Miss Radcliffe and actually touching her right breast while they were in the tunnel of love at the fair. It was a pretty wild idea anyway. An 11-year-old kid taking a teacher to the county fair. Miss Radcliffe was pretty, but she was old. She had told the speech kids once that she would be 24 in November. So Brian carefully refolded his daydream along its crease, as a man will carefully fold a well-read and much-valued document, and tucked it in the shelf in the back of his mind where it belonged. He prepared to mount his bike and pedal the rest of the way home. But he was passing the new shop at just that moment, and the sign in the doorway caught his eye. Something about it had changed. He stopped his bike and looked at it. Grand opening October 9th, bring your friends at the top was gone. It had been replaced by a small square sign, red letters on a white background. Open, it said, and open was all it said. Brian stood with his bike between his legs, looking at this, and his heart began to beat a little faster. "You're not going in there, are you?" he asked himself. "I mean, even if it really is opening a day early, you're not going in there, right?" "Why not?" he answered himself. "Well, because the window's still soaked over. The shade on the door is still drawn. You go in there, anything can happen to you. Anything. Sure, like the guy who runs it is Norman Bates or something. He dresses up in his mother's clothes and stabs his customers. Right. Well, forget it, the timid part of his mind said, although that part sounded as if it already knew it had lost. There's something funny about it. But then Brian thought of telling his mother, just saying nonchalantly, "By the way, Ma, you know that new store, Needful Things? Well, it opened a day early. I went in and took a look around." She'd push the mute button on the remote control in a hurry then. You better believe it. She'd want to hear all about it. This thought was too much for Brian. He put down his bike's kickstand and passed slowly to the shade of the awning. It felt at least 10 degrees cooler beneath its canopy, and approached the door of Needful Things. As he put his hand on the big, old-fashioned brass doorknob, it occurred to him that the sign must be a mistake. It had probably been sitting there, just inside the door, for tomorrow, and someone had put it up by accident. He couldn't hear a single sound from behind the drawn shade. The place had a deserted feel. But since he had come this far, he tried the knob, and it turned easily under his hand. The latch clicked back, and the door of Needful Things swung open.